Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful women out there. So, today is Mother's Day, and for the very first time, I feel like to talk about it openly. So, I have shared about parts of my journey, but I never shared everything about my daughter, about the journey, about her life, what happened to her. So, actually, I was scared somewhere because I think. Grief is a kind of topic where everyone is not comfortable to talk about and to listen, and they don't know how to react when it comes to the conversation like about pain, loss, hospital, all those things. Sometimes loss heals with time, but sometimes loss just becomes who we are. And I also know that there are people out there who have experienced some kind of loss or pain in their life. And it is also true that at some point in our life where we experience kind of loss which changes us forever. So that's why I want to talk about here about my journey. And I think because it's a part of my life, and I think no matter what happened, I'm still a mother. So I was very young when I got married, but in my head there was one thing very clear: when I want to have a child, it was not like just because family, people and society is expecting from me just because I'm married. It was not like that. I think bringing a child in the world is a huge responsibility, and you know, parenting is really important thing. And it's important which kind of life you are giving, which kind of environment you are providing to the child, and are you, most important thing, are you mentally prepared for it to take the responsibility of a human being? So that's why I wanted to have a child when I'm ready. So in 2021, Divi came into my life, and everything changed after that. I mean, I was enjoying the motherhood journey, and I think it was a whole new experience. Life was chaotic, but it was beautiful also. So when Divi born, you know, she born here in Pithoragarh, and so when she born, they discharged us within 24 hours. They didn't run any kind of test of my daughter. They didn't. I wasn't aware about her blood group and anything. So she had jaundice also, but they said okay, it's fine, it will be gone after a few days. And I was a new first time mother, and I wasn't aware about medical and everything. But still, I noticed something unusual in my daughter, which was that time it was blood vessels around her face, in her under her eyes, inside her mouth, and around her cheekbones. And it was not looking normal at all. And it was bluish in color and reddish. So I visited gynec, and she said maybe it's a birthmark. And she also said, okay, she is looking yellow, but you don't need to do blood test and everything. It will be gone after a few days. Then I wasn't, feeling okay. So I went to the well-known pediatric in the Pithoragarh, and he said, he looked at her and he said, it's an ulcer. So he gave the medicine for ulcer, and obviously it was not ulcer at all. There is a difference between ulcer and hemangioma. So my daughter had hemangioma, and later I got to know when uh, we started her treatment and everything. So and about jaundice, he said, okay, it will be gone after a few days. You don't need to do anything. And then we went to the village. Time passed. Devi was feeding nicely. She was active, and everything was happening nicely. Then, after 2.5 months, we returned to Mumbai. And the very next day, I took her to the pediatric because she had loose motions. But as doctor examined her, he said, "Okay, her condition is not good. Her liver is enlarged, so you have go to the another doctor, a bigger hospital." And then we went to the another pediatric. Then he referred to the another doctor, and we were doing for 2-3 days these things. Then finally we reached to the hospital, and they immediately hospitalized her, and procedure started, scanning and everything started. And they said, okay, she is suspected of biliary atresia. And by that time, when results came out, it was confirmed that okay, it was biliary atresia. So it's a rare liver disease and which presents from the birth, and we were living here, so that's why we were not aware about it. And doctors here, I have told you enough. So that's why I feel, I mean, living in this kind of area, rural area, especially if you have a child or senior citizen in your life and you have any kind of medical conditions, it just become complicated. So that's why I would never recommend to anyone to live in such rural areas. I mean, be aware about your health, your children's health, and it's really important. Then everything started. We hospitalized, and it was pandemic time. They did COVID test, so I came positive, and they told me to leave the hospital immediately and isolate myself. And my daughter was there in the hospital, and they were doing, preparing for her surgery. So we hired a caretaker. So in the family, every female was COVID positive, and Devi was with us, surrounded by us, but she was COVID negative. So she was in the hospital, and we had to operate her as soon as possible. So I left the hospital, and we hired the caretaker, but she was very young. She couldn't handle her. She said, "Okay, I cannot do this." So we hired another caretaker, and she handled her nicely. She was, senior. So I was isolated for 23 days. I was not allowed to visit my doctor, and they did her surgery. It was called, Kasai procedure. I don't know what happened, there. They operate her twice, and in between, we also got to know that Divi also had ASD. So it's a congenital, heart disease where there was a moderate size of hole in her heart in the upper chamber. But it wasn't that much, concerning. The main concern was still liver. Then, you know, after that, I think our whole world turned upside down. Our the hospital became our second home, and yeah, that's how things started. So every week you used to blood test, evaluation, we would visit doctors and everything. So what happens, when child has biliary atresia, the biggest sign is the color of stool. So the color of stool is slightly in a whitish tone. It's not yellow. It's not green, because those child who have biliary atresia, they are not, they couldn't absorb the fat, and because of that, their liver damages, and also they don't gain weight. So it was happening with the Divi also. There was no bile duct. Then we also got to know that her surgeries failed, and by the time also biopsy reports came, and her liver was damaged, and there are 4 stages. So her liver was in a third stage. So they said, okay, be ready. I mean, you have to do liver transplant in future, no matter what. I was assured that maybe in the family someone will donate their part of liver to her. But then one day, her stool color changed. It was black in color, and there was a weird smell. And I told everyone in the family, okay, there is something, a mother has always a gut feeling. But everyone was like, okay, it's fine, you are overthinking, you always search and you do kind of thing, I used to do study a lot about her health, and about biliary atresia and related to all those things. So they are telling me that I'm overthinking, and it's not, it's just a, and she started having fever and cough and everything, and they were like, okay, it's just viral, she's already weak, so we have to already go to the hospital after a few days, so just wait. And I agreed. So after a few days, we went to the hospital. We had to do some scans. We did, and doctor said, okay, there is a internal bleeding, and you have to hospitalize her immediately. So we rushed to the ER, and we hospitalized her. And doctor came that night. I still remember. Doctor came, and she inserted IV on her hand, and we started crying. And I was trying to calm her down, but okay, she was crying uncontrollably. And then she started coughing, and I was just holding her, and she started vomiting. First I thought it maybe just a normal vomit. So I was just patting her. Then and she was, she vomited a lot. And then when I looked it down, it was just blood everywhere, in from my clothes to the floor. And I was just shocked, and I panicked and went to the doctor, and they got also panicked. They called to the GI team, and they everyone came. And then they said, okay, now you have 48 hours, we have to monitor her because her condition is critical right now. Then for 2 days I was just holding her on my lap, and she was not allowed to eat anything. And there was flutes and IVs monitor and everything was there. And I was just holding her, and I still remember those nights when for the very first time I saw losing, so I saw two children losing their life, and one was in my left and one was on my right. And it was my very first time when I saw someone who was dying in front of me, and that those were children. I mean, I was just crying. I was looking them. I was praying, okay, and I was just checking the uh, because it was a general ward, and I was looking at the monitor, and the medical staff and everyone was doing everything they could do. They were giving them CPR and everything, but okay, they just couldn't survive. It was really heartbreaking. I mean, and Divi was in my lap, unconscious, and she was, there was only and we had to also, 48 hours, and anything could happen to her also. At that time, Divi, she stabilized, and they shifted her to the PICU, and they told me to bring the uh, blood for transfusion. So while I was going to the another hospital to bring the blood, I was not able to walk properly because for 2 days I didn't eat anything. And I still remember I bring the blood, and I also got something for myself to eat, and I was sitting in the corridor on a chair, and I was crying, and I was telling myself, okay, you have to eat, for your daughter. And I ate, and I was gulping food with the help of water. I mean, those days are literally difficult. I think there, as I read somewhere, how can you be not be, believe in God? And they said, have you ever visited children hospital? So when you enter to the, children hospital, and especially in the PICU, you get to know, okay, what children are going through. I mean, they just come to this world, and they are suffering so much. They are around the wires, monitors, they are unconscious. It's just difficult to describe. And so Divi became conscious, and her condition stabilized a bit. So whenever I used to visit to her, and she would, if she would recognize me, so I used to wear masks that time, we had to wear. And she would recognize me, she would started crying, and pulling all the wires and everything. So then doctors, said we have to tie her hands and legs. So they used to tie her legs to the cot, and it was. I used to feel so helpless that time because I cannot do. I mean, I just cannot even hold my child in that situation. But I think the staff was good enough, and they used to take care of her a lot. I mean, they used to say, okay, don't worry, we are here, we will take care of her. And they used to take care of all the nurses, all the male staffs were there. They were very kind enough. So when so they were shifted to the GI, and they said, okay, this is the time, and you have to get ready for the liver transplant. So they asked for our blood group. So I was A negative, and he was A positive, so I was not the match. Then they asked to her father, but he said, okay, he cannot do it. And other family members also denied to donate, and I was completely hopeless. And it was like, I didn't know what to do. I mean, then I asked the doctors that my brother's blood group is O positive, can he do it? He said, okay, he can do it. So in India, only family members can donate, okay, not outsiders. So there is a law, I guess. So then I called my brother immediately, and he said, yes, he will do it. Even he said, why are you even asking? And I was like, obviously, I have to ask. Then on the very second day, he came, and evaluation started. But they said, okay, he cannot do it because some medical reasons. Then I became again hopeless, and they said, okay, Mama, we can't do anything without a donor. And I think no one in your family, no one is willing to do her treatment. But and I said, okay, I want to do it no matter what. And in between, we also started fundraising, and the hospital reached to the online organization, fundraising organizations, and they came, they clicked the picture, they asked about everything. So fundraising started. Then obviously my brother was rejected. Then we went to another hospital. They said, okay, if the child is very young and their body had not developed antigens and those antibodies, mother can also donate. So we did test, but unfortunately Divi has already developed antibodies in her body, so I cannot do it. And that time when they said, no, okay, mama, you can do it, I was like, okay, if you would ask to donate my heart, I would happily and willingly do it. Then they said, okay, we can't do anything, and I was literally very hopelessly, I was looking at the doctor. There were uh, tears in my eyes. So then I said, okay, my mother's blood group is O negative. So they said, okay, yeah, she can do it. Then I called my mother, and yeah, she took 1 month almost to take the decision. And I think it was not easy. Before, when my brothers came to donate his part of liver to my daughter, everyone questioned her. They questioned my mother, that which kind of mother she is, and she's sending her grown-up kid for just 10 months old child, and just a bubble of water. And they were angry, they stopped talking with her, they criticized her. So it was very difficult for my mother, but somehow she came, and again evaluation started, and she was perfectly fine, her body was perfectly fine, everything was positive, in a positive side. Even her Divi's cardiac doctor also gave us permission. Everything was fine, perfect. We also raised the fund, and we had to raise 25 lakhs around. So we raised the funds also, and with the help of very kind people. I think I just got to know that humanity still exists, kind people are still there. So with the help of my community here, from my town, from where we were living, from worldwide, we got the fund. And I think I still remember, there was a girl, she was around 10 years old, and she had piggy bank, and she broke that piggy bank for TV, and she donated 1 lakh rupees. I mean, can you imagine how kind she would be? I mean, she was just 10 years old, and she's donating 1 lakh rupees, and from her savings. So I mean, I realize, okay, humanity still exists, kindness, there are kind people. So with the prayers, with the help of everyone, procedure started. But one thing I want to start, when we do fundraising online, so there is a well known organization. They said, we cannot run your campaign forward, uh, because so they came and they said, okay, we have to shoot your another video. And I was like, okay, fine, I will ask for fund and everything. But they said you had to cry in front of the camera. And I think grief and pain is not acting, and I just cannot do it in front of camera, and because I want money, and I want to raise fund for my daughter. And I said, okay, I cannot do it. I mean, it's not a acting. Okay, you are just saying, okay, action, and I've started crying, and tears are rolling out from my eyes. I cannot do it. And he said, okay, so we cannot do anything, we cannot run your campaign. I said, okay, it's fine. Then we reached to another organization, and I told them, okay, if you would ask me to cry in front of the camera, I cannot do it. And I explained that, okay, it's very genuine, because my child needs treatment, and she's dying. Okay, first of all. And if I would have enough money, why I would ask to everyone, to people, to donate? Rather, I would just go for the treatment. They said, okay, relax, we will not ask for these things. Then we reached to different NGOs, organizations, too many ones. Some said yes, some declined, everything happened, and somehow we raised fund 25 lakh rupees. Then, so what happened, if even you are when there are organizations, when you raise the fund, they took, no matter how much, they took the 25% of that amount. So if we have raised 15 lakhs, so they took the 25%, but still we managed 25. So I mean, I think we raised more than 25 lakh rupees that time, because organizations also took 25% of those amounts. So it happened like that. We hospitalized after some time, and everything was perfect and fine, and surgery started. So it was around 5 a.m. They took Divi, and we went to the OT around 7 a.m. and they went inside. I was scared, I was hopeful, I don't know, but so there's surgery lasts long for almost 23 hours, and my mother came outside around 10 p.m., but my daughter came outside around 3 a.m. And when the moment she came outside, she was looking a bit better, but bit so she was looking better that time, and I was like, okay, maybe she's looking yellow, so maybe she will be fine and everything. But then we went to the PICU, and after half an hour they called me and said, okay, there is uncontrollable bleeding, and her blood pressure is not coming, it's not normalizing, and because of that her organs are functioning very well. And though these 24 hours are literally very critical for her, and she's you know her body was so fragile that time, and her body was too weak, so they said anything can happen, so we have 24 hours. But then her surgeon also came, and I was literally begging to him, please save her, no matter what, please save her. And he was like, we are trying best. And all they could say. And after half an hour they again came and they said, so she had her first cardiac arrest, and she was in an isolated ward, and there was a small window, and from there it was visible, and they were giving her CPR, and it was very difficult to saw her. So she had that first cardiac arrest, and they told me to, if you want to see her. And so they gave me all the protective gears, mask and everything, and I went inside. The moment I saw her, I just couldn't recognize her. She was not looking like my daughter at all. Her whole body was swollen, her eyes were puffy, and she was not looking like Divi at all. And I couldn't feel, I mean, is she really my daughter? Then I sat there. Mm, I hold her hand. I touched her toes, her eyes, her head, and I was calling her name. Anything to her. I didn't say don't go. I didn't say anything. I was like, I was just calling her name. And then I looked at the monitor, and it was the most scary thing. I just got to remember, when that girl lost her life in front of my eyes, when Divi was in, critical condition. Her monitor was, so just like that, Divi's, when I look that monitor, Divi's monitor, it was coming down from 15, 10, and it reached to the 5. And I couldn't stand there anymore. I mean, I told them, okay, I just want to go there outside. And sometimes I feel, okay, I think I should be there. I should be there with her. I shouldn't, left her alone on those moments. But at the same time, I didn't want it to bring, these memories of my daughter. I didn't want it, these to be last memories of my daughter. I mean, when her heart was dropping and she was losing her battle, and it was the most difficult thing for me. And I said, I want to go outside. And within 30 minutes, she had 3 cardiac arrests, and she lost her battle. So you know what, that time I was not able to cry. I wasn't able to process my emotions. Even when I went to meet her, my voice was trembling, I was scared, but I was just in denial. I wasn't trying to accept that okay, this is going to happen, and I couldn't accept it. And even when I lost my daughter and they said okay, now she's no more, I was just sitting there outside of the PICU, and everyone was coming to me and they were telling me she is gone, so that I could cry, but I couldn't cry at all. And in my mind, I was telling myself, okay, she's gone, okay, she's gone, but I couldn't process my emotions. Everyone came, relatives started coming. I think one person said, okay, you are still young, you will have another child, it's okay, it's fine. Someone said, and they said okay, she was in so much pain, it's better than she's gone, let her go. And her pediatric also came, she said. I think everyone was trying to make me cry. Her pediatric came and she said okay, you were a great mother, you did everything you could do for your daughter, but it was her destiny. But there was no response from my side because I was not able to regulate my emotions. Then I don't know why they took me to the ER, and I was just lying there looking at the ceiling. And I don't know, that time I realized, okay, I just want to see my daughter, and told them I want her, I want her to be alone. I was scared maybe they will took her somewhere. So I requested them and they took me there upstairs again. And then after a few hours my aunt came and she hugged me tightly. And that was the moment when I burst into tears. When I cried so hard. But that was the only moment. And after that, police came, billing, organizations, everything started coming. Police were asking me questions, what happened? Also asking for, to pay the whole bills and everything. Otherwise, unless they won't allow us to, take the week. And from the fund, from wherever we had, raised the fund, they were also asking to, what exactly happened, what are the results. And they also said that it will take time to process the everything. And I was there. I mean, sometimes I feel I wasn't allowed to cry to regulate my emotions, and I was just doing everything. And then nurses came and they said okay, you want to dress up your child for the very last time. And I was like, no, I hate the idea that this will be the last time. So I hate that idea. This will be the last time when I will dress up my daughter. So I said, no, I cannot do it. I cannot take those memories of my daughter with myself. But sometimes now I feel I think I should have done, but I don't know. I mean, it's just what if kind of thing. So that was my daughter's story. That's how we lost her. Then I came home, and I remember I was sleeping on the couch and I suddenly woke up and I was like, I have to make something for Divi. She must be hungry, and where is she? And then again I realized okay, she's no more. And I was telling myself, okay, now you don't have to do anything. And my mother was in ICU also. We didn't tell her about all these things. And I didn't know what to do, so I just came straight to home. My brothers were there taking care of my mother. Then after a few days, when my mother, her condition stabilized, I went to visit her. And first I gave her food, she ate, then she asked me how's Divi doing. And all I could say is she's no more. I mean, for child, I think mother is the only person in their whole life, in the whole world, they could just break down in front of her mother. I mean, for me, it is like that because she's my mother, okay? And I can be myself in front of her. But that day, I just couldn't cry in front of her. But apart from all those things, she was the kind of girl, she was the biggest foodie. I mean, she started eating everything at the very young age, and she loved food. I mean, I never saw any baby, who loved food that much, and she was that kind of, girl. And I think if she would be here, I mean, I would just spoil her with, different things and recipes. And yeah, another thing, Divi never liked those blingy frills kind of clothes, frocks, and all those things. She always wanted, comfortable clothes. She would be irritated if I would, dress up her in frocks and everything. So sometimes I used to tell my mother, Mom, Mommy, if she will become tomboy. But nothing is wrong with the tomboy. But if you are a girl mom, what is your concern? I think whenever someone held her, they just poke her, inject her. So I think my daughter, she learned pain before her life. My mother was mummy for her. I was mama, and my brothers, mama, uncles. She was like that, and except from these old people like us, she would not go to anyone. And someone is just calling, her name. She will be like, she will just turn her head, and she'll be like, okay, don't come near to me. She was that kind of. I mean, obviously we didn't taught her, but all the all the experiences she had, she became like that. And I think there are many things to talk about, but it is again, I have few things to share. I mean, so she just lived for 13 months, and but still she gave me so much happiness, fulfillness within me.
दिवा, हेलो 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 हेलो। दिवा, दिवा बच्चा।